Oh, I'm sorry.
I was telling you how much I dislike.
Oh, really?
Well, let you know about that.
I know what you're saying.
But it's not.
Right, right. I still think it's better than turn it in.
And
To some extent.
Hey, whatever works.
Yeah,
I go to Google.
it's still better than nothing.
it's fun, huh?
So we have a counter for you on the academic freedom. This one's for you. Here's some for the rest of you.
Just open it back up and stop it.
Okay.
Just close the lid.
Okay, so don't pay too much attention to B2. I think I just worked off what you sent, which I guess may or may not have accurately reflected what you intended to eventually propose. You know, we're fine either way. Faculty member is, faculty are. That's not a point of contention for us. What we've done is try and flesh out to some extent what it means for your freedom to speak and write as a citizen to be subject to the First Amendment. You mentioned that trying to get down into all the tests and stuff is a losing proposition, but we thought it would be good to at least give people some sense of what they don't have the right to do. Namely, they're not protected by free speech or academic freedom if they're making statements that are knowingly false or reckless, or when they're speaking on things that are not genuine matters of public concern. Those are kind of two of the key phrases in a couple of Supreme Court cases on this issue, which we've referenced here. So as long as paragraph C, which you may know, is lifted pretty heavily from the AAUP's statement on principles of academic freedom. So we feel as long as someone's abiding by kind of the expectations of that paragraph, there shouldn't be an issue. So we took the kind of caveat there and just broke it out into a separate section to give some sense of what employees are not allowed to do, hopefully without getting way too far down in the weeds about it. I don't think it's intended to be a huge substantive change or anything to your proposal. Just again, in the interest of not having people look at things and wonder what they don't know or feel like they have to go and look in all these other places. We thought that kind of served that purpose, so that's why we did that the way it is there.
Is your position still that if we were to agree on it, that it would knock out the non-discrimination article too?
Yes.
Okay, I think we'll probably need a few minutes, another caucus.
And I think that's all we worked on to bring forward now.
You guys discussed all the access to faculty.
Oh, yes, sorry. Yeah, we were good with that one. We've got a couple of clean copies. We'll see that one.
I'll find them.
And on the department chair issue, we talked about this for a moment downstairs. What I think would be helpful for us over the next couple of weeks until our next session, I think we should be able to come to an accord of some kind, even if it's a temporary one on this whole issue. But one thing that would be helpful is a little bit more elaboration on sort of the full spectrum of duties that are being, in the administration's view, to be shifted to this assistant dean. It seems that the major sort of difference between the two proposals as far as, the bread and butter of it is whether or not there's release time associated with it. Our view has been it's a busy job. It would be helpful if they had the release time, your position as well. If we take enough duties off, maybe they don't need the release time. So in order for us to agree to that, I think we just need to have a clear understanding of what duties are being proposed to be shifted. So if you have that for us, I think that would be helpful in our deliberations on it.
Yeah, and I'm gonna have Dr. Gina speak to that much more intelligently than I could on it, so he can give you sort of a vision of what we anticipate for this year. Not really being that it would be an interim MOU, memorandum of understanding for this year. And we would continue then to discuss and negotiate the remainder of these negotiations, what happens beyond that. So that doesn't preclude, if it's not working, continuing to tweak and adjust. So with that, let me turn it over to Stan. You can talk about how you envision the job.
Sure. So, the main changes that we propose to remove from the department chair structure, double offset that will be shifted to the assistant dean. What is the evaluations? So which evaluations? We believe that the department chair should still evaluate the adjunct faculty on the West Campus within the particular discipline. However, the assistant dean will evaluate the dual enrollment faculty. As you know, the West Campus, the goodly number of high schools that are in the jurisdiction, that's a main challenge for us, not only the adjunct faculty, but the dual enrollment faculty. So if we remove that responsibility from the department chair, that has an inordinate amount of time allotted to it. And especially since the department chair responsibility is during the daytime for these dual enrollment faculty. Most of the K-12 teachers teach during the day, correct? So that is one major responsibility we believe that the assistant dean will be able to shoulder. The other key cardinal responsibility is the master course scheduling activities, right? So we have the master course schedule process. So the department chair is responsible for providing, connecting with his or her faculty within their purview and having some type of a schematic of the courses, the proposed courses and schedule for the West Campus proper. However, they're also responsible for, and again, you'll recall in my discussion last meeting, the department chairs had asked for having a greater level of interfacing with the campus associate deans regarding curriculum. So we provided that to them. And again, that was not occurring. So the assistant dean will be responsible chiefly for the West Campus classes. That doesn't mean that the faculty won't have say. They will have say, but the assistant dean will be the custodian and the coordinator of that, and will provide that to the dean, and will participate in the master course schedule process, but also the interfacing with the campus associate deans relevant to the entire curriculum from arts and sciences. So those two key areas, as I said last time, our dean went to the budget here, the master course scheduling committee, and only 2 of the 6 department chairs had adequately prepared for that schedule to arm her, to prepare her to be able to articulate the West Campus schedule, let alone the college-wide schedule in coordination with the provost and the associate dean. So if we take that away, and we take the dual enrollment faculty away, that clearly will not necessitate release time.
Okay. Any questions about the?
Oh, I have a question. How many adjuncts is the current West Campus department chair responsible for?
Just the adjuncts within his or her discipline.
Do you have a
We
ballpark?
can get that number.
Okay. Just
Dr.
curious,
Thompson,
even just the
would you have an
ballpark.
idea right now? How many are?
I can get that
You
number.
can get that. I mean, that should be very manageable. I mean, you think
Okay,
about.
I just have no
right,
idea
how
of the
many-
ballpark. Is it 5? Is
Sure.
it 10? Is it 20? Is it 30? Like, I have no clue, so.
And just to put things in perspective, just for the sake of, again, another thought experiment, when you perceive the responsibility of the dean, right, with all the other responsibilities that the dean has, The dean has to evaluate all the full-time faculty members, correct? So when you look at how many, 80 faculty members in arts and sciences, so that's a huge responsibility while shouldering all the other responsibility of an administrator. I mean, just from a comparison perspective,
Which is a huge number. So yeah, I was just curious what,
so if we take away the dual enrollment faculty, especially on the West Campus, put that to the assistant dean, that will alleviate a significant amount of problems. Because every semester consistently, semester after semester, we haven't been getting all adjunct faculty evaluated, and neither all dual enrollment faculty evaluated. And that's been a consistent problem.
I'll offer a couple of other comments to, we spent the bulk of our time talking during the caucus about the department chair issue. So maybe for next time around, if you're considering further as to the lease issue, looking at your proposal, 2-year appointment, we're thinking really should be one, in particular for this year, an interim MOU for a year and see how it works, mentality, and continue to talk about whether 2-year makes sense beyond that. On the overload, extra pay courses, we can compromise. The view is if we have the position constituted as Dr. Jeanette just described, your language is a little bit different than ours. Ours was you won't teach them except in rare circumstances. Yours more entitled to teach one unless we can show it's not working out. So we can go with yours, but we would want no release time and not agree to a limitation on the face-to-face. Currently, right now, correct me if I'm wrong, in your policies, you can apply to teach 2 online courses. The college has discretion to grant that. We would not want to commit to a maximum 2 face-to-face. Keep that system in place, but would agree on the extra pay course.
Just out of curiosity, what's the concern with having 2 face-to-face instead of, I guess, the current 3?
Well, I think from our discussion, we view the online course really as just as rigorous as the face-to-face course, and also scheduling, whether it's workable, already a difficult task to do without those kinds of limitations. To agree to that would make that a monumental task in our view.
Well, the reason I ask is it came up in our conversation that there are times and situations where it's difficult to make load on one campus where for certain, when you're a department chair, there are some situations where it's difficult to make load on one campus when you have that 3 face-to-face course requirement. And so if you have to go to another campus, that's like, not only is it the time spent teaching, but it's the time spent driving. And so it's, even though the course isn't any less rigorous, there's still, it requires more of a time commitment in some situations in that sense. So that's kind of why we would sort of focused on that as a possibility.
But to that point, Graham, then you know the college it would be a case-by-case scenario, right? So rather than having a blanket black and white prescription in the agreement, you know, we would review that matter, and in that case, at times the faculty member has done online or hybridized, of course. So, but you said that's one example, but I don't think in arts and sciences, fairly certain that our full-time faculty have no problem making a load on one campus, with the exception of one area.
It came up as a possibility, sure. So, well, yeah, I mean, maybe rather than the blanket thing, maybe we'll try and address that sort of concern specifically.
And one other thing, pardon me, just our position has been always with our faculty proposition that online courses are equally rigorous. They require equal level of engagement as face-to-face classes, right? the level of preparation, the level of attention to detail, the expectations of students and the college are equal. So regardless of the modality, we should have there'd be no separation of rigor or of the amount of time, effort, energy, expenditure, and preparation that a faculty member places on the course just based on the modality. So we just have to be careful. I would recommend, on behalf of our faculty here, just to be careful about making implicit arguments that the online modality is somewhat less rigorous or requires less attention, preparation, etc., because that's not our reality. And for years, our faculty have been proposing, whether we're saying what's our standard class size in online compared to face-to-face or student learning outcomes, that they're equal, and we agree that they're equal, and that's why we don't think that saying we teach online, that'll give us more time to do department chair duties. But is that really the path that our faculty wish to go on? I don't think that should be the case.
And if it came across that way, that's our mistake, probably my mistake. But no, I think the reason for that distinction and that idea is not because it takes any less time or effort or energy, but just that there's more flexibility in how you go about doing it. So it's easier to accommodate, the various meeting schedules that department chairs have to keep up when you have an online section, have a little more flexibility in how you schedule your time. It's not an amount of time or energy or effort, it's just the flexibility you have and how that time and energy and effort is allocated throughout the week. If that makes sense. So one other question kind of came up during our discussion, and I think I know the answer, but just wanted to get some clarity on this. So in your department chair proposal, in section 3, the 5 current department chair assignments in the Division of Workforce Development and Career and Technical Education will be changed to program director. So we have someone who is, in sort of that area now, who told us that kind of the current setup is that there's one program that has a program director, and then there's these 4 other programs that have a department chair. So is the proposal to change that department chair who's over the 4 programs into a program director of those 4 programs, or to have program directors for each of those programs? I don't think that was what.
Well, by program, we mean, we're not talking about degrees or certificates, we're talking about program. So right now, they're all department chairs of workforce. The proposal is to convert the department chair title to program director for the programs. Some programs have 1 AS degree, other departments have multiple AS degrees.
Same head count.
Same number of people.
Oh, same number of people, correct,
Okay.
right. So if we have several AS degrees under the business umbrella, that doesn't mean that we're going to have separate program directors for each of the AS degree. It'll be one program director for the entire business motif. Does that make sense? Does that answer?
It does.
That's still accurate.
Also, Graham, on the department chair issue, we talked qualifications and the timeline. Timeline, we're not opposed to having a timeline. We suggest tweaking it so that we send out the call in April, but decisions made by last day of class of spring semester, as opposed to April 15th. Obviously, trying to get it done earlier than later, giving us a little bit more time to make the decision. Qualification side, had a lot of discussion about qualification having to have a continuing contract. Our proposal, we don't have language, but our counter proposal, that would be continuing contract preferred, but the idea being it's not necessarily binding. The intent is to get most qualified person, and we recognize it's usually going to be somebody who's been there, continuing contract. But for those cases where it's not necessarily always possible to have a preferred, though, it's some wiggle room. And we can work on language to that. That's where we came down on the qualification. I think that's kind of our conception of the department chair, again, with the overall being, try and get something in place for this year, see how it works
Right.
out, and continue to discuss for the future.
Yeah, so, we kind of talked about the MOU sort of idea that you brought up before our caucus, and I think we're interested in that as a concept to just kind of get something in place for this year. We should be able to hammer out the details next session. One question about that. So this is just a hypothetical. I don't know what's going to happen in the fall in our negotiations, but let's just say that we agree to kind of basically what you proposed, right? 5,000 reduced duties, but no release time, but one overload unless you're, making a mess of it. Let's say we get further down the line, we get through the economics, or get to the economics, and faculty look at kind of the economic package and say, well, we're okay taking, a little bit less salary in order to raise the department chair stipend. We think it's that important. If we just get to that point, do you think agreeing to the MOU now would necessarily foreclose that possibility?
For this year, for this coming year.
For this kind of maybe we reach agreement in December, could we change?
Yeah, I think we can leave the language to leave that open. That's also subject to further discussion if you want to package it together either side. I don't see why that doesn't sound unreasonable to me. Not saying we would agree to it, but if you want to have a package, we might do the same thing. Obviously, we're all waiting to see how budgets come out, wages. So I think we can build into the MOU something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not just salaries. There's a lot of different pieces here that have sort of an economic component. The team may eventually feel that a higher department chair stipend is more important than one of those components and may be willing to sacrifice for that. I don't know. Just
the only thing I would want to make sure is that if we put them together, then we go with whatever we have, say July 1st. That's the status quo for the year, subject to being changed at any point, really, through negotiations. But if we don't reach agreement, we end up going through impasse, whatnot. We could still continue it until we get to the end of that process.
That's reasonable.
Yeah, just ask a question. Okay, so to clarify that hypothetical, so just to make sure we understand, so there might be a possibility where the faculty will come back and say, we're willing to reduce our annual salary and take an offset, the existing reduction, and place that in the department chair / program director remuneration.
Right,
Is that
or something else.
Or
Right?
something else.
We've got a bunch of different things that are going to have a price tag attached to them. There is interest in our side on having the flexibility to, if we decide that it's more important to raise the department chair stipend than to get whatever that other thing is, to be able to do that. In other words, this MOU doesn't foreclose that possibility of raising that stipend even for this year if we
Yeah, I don't see a problem with
Understood.
that. I think that's reasonable.
We would care that may help us entice people to take the position as well in terms of that stuff. It seems to be a problem, maybe that's a simple fix, that's not too often, but just want to see that as a possibility.
There's another door to be open in case
Yeah.
it becomes appealing.
No, I think that's fine. The only other thing we had was, is the leave of absence. I'll go through it fairly quickly because we're not positioned this time to TA, I think some of the subsections, we have agreement or we're close to it, but unfortunately our HR director is not here today. He couldn't be derailed to be here, so I want to run through and kind of tell you where we are on all of these and ones I think we can TA, but we want to run it by him one more time and bring it back next time around. Some of them, like 13.1, I think your changes, particularly the C, D, and E, we're still uncomfortable with at this point. Might depend on total package. So section 13.1 in general provisions, we're not in position to agree, and we're still more of the mindset of sticking with our prior proposal on C, D, and E. Sick leave, it looks to me like we're essentially on the same page for everything, but we want So I think we can come back and TA that next time around. If I read it right, it looks like you're agreeable to our counter proposal to your initial proposal. If that's true, then I want Darrell to kind of take a look at it, just make sure it's not counter to anything. Right now, he's been going through IMMs and whatnot, making sure he's seeing what may need to be changed and things of that nature. I don't think anything with sick leave is changing. Assuming that's the case, it's not inconsistent, and I think we can TA that next time around. Personal leave, we need to have further discussion amongst our side on the personal leave issue. With him here, saying parental leave is, like I said before, something that maybe philosophically depends really. That's an additional leave we don't currently have on what we end up with. Wages and full package of benefits. The FMLA, we did discuss this a little bit. We are still a little hesitant to put it in the contract as fleshed out as we have it here. We are not opposed to putting it in the contract. And the thought was to reference the policy or IMM with the understanding, of course, that seeing where we end up with all of that is that any references doesn't mean we can change them, but any future changes will still have to be negotiated. And the reason for it really is just more practical side of FMLA policies get updated about every year. It's usually small tweaks, changes in regulation in the law. So we find it harder to keep it something as extensive as this up to date. But we're not opposed to having in the contract covered by the contract. So give that some food for thought. If you guys are agreeable, maybe more of a reference or synopsis of it with reference to the policy itself. That may be a doable compromise. We had some pretty extensive discussion on the extended medical leave, and we need to have further discussion on our side about that. We just kind of float this idea, maybe if you are able to respond or take a quick caucus so we can discuss and respond. The language that you have in subsection 6E, tacking on to our language, so one, I want to make sure I understand it, and two, assuming I understand it, float a potential compromise. So this is the language that essentially says when you're on a non-FMLA extended medical leave, we reserve the right when you're ready to come back, put you in a comparable position, great, but potentially a different location. So in response to that proposal from us, your proposal today, as I understand it, is that if you're coming back mid-semester, okay, that's fine. Next semester, you go back to the same position, grade, and location. Is that?
Yes, right. So if you come back off of an extended leave, then, you put them wherever there's a job, right? But when the next semester rolls around, classes have ended, whatnot, it didn't occur to us that there'd be any reason they couldn't go back to the campus they were at before. I'm assuming most of the time it's going to be an adjunct who's picking this up, picking up whatever they missed in the meantime. We would say that the full-time faculty member should, be able to go back and have that position rather than an adjunct continue to have it.
All right, so our thought on that, I don't think anybody disagreed with from us. If we have a position that is still available, still a position, and an adjunct's occupied it, we would put whoever's coming back in that position at the start of the next semester. The thought with it being medical leave is there may be circumstances where it's not an adjunct, would put another full-time position, maybe a new hire, maybe not, maybe just somebody else. And although it probably wouldn't come up very often, how do we handle that? And our thought was we would not want to boot full-time faculty member out of the position, but recognizing that whoever was on leave by this time might be over a year with FMLA and whatnot, might want that position or that location back to give them kind of preferential status. Not gonna knock someone else out of the position if they're full-time, but once the next one opens up, you get the job essentially. Something along those lines, haven't ironed out the language. And again, thinking it wouldn't come up very often, but with medical, I don't know, and I'm kind of envisioning someone goes out on FMLA, they exhaust FMLA, they can't come back, but still want to come back and might be able to come back. Whether you hire an adjunct versus put someone full-time in that position might depend on the underlying circumstances. If it's clearly something that they just need more time, but are going to come back, probably we're hiring an adjunct. That is not an issue. If it's something where it's not sure if you're coming back, everybody wants to hold a position, you're going to probably come back, maybe, but maybe not. We might look at full-time fill. Wouldn't want to penalize that full-time person either, but it's trying to balance the two full-time faculty members really, to have that flexibility. So that's sort of what we were kicking around for a little while, and don't have to respond right now, but maybe we'll take a break. Let's know if you like that kind of idea, then we'll work up some language. If you're not on board with that, it's not worth it, but or we have a different, better idea to balance the competing interests. So that's where we were. We also talked about that same issue with the sabbatical, but on one hand, we want some uniformity, someone come back from, on the other hand, sabbatical a little different, a little easier to plan for medical leave, so it's probably not as important from a sabbatical. I think is where we came down, but similar type issue.
So let me just repeat it back to you, make sure I understand. So so someone goes out on extended leave, medical leave, position's filled by an adjunct, whenever the faculty member comes back, they just can displace the adjunct, without too many questions asked. But if, for whatever reason, a full-time faculty member gets hired, when the person on leave comes back, they take sort of whatever they can get, but get some kind of right of first refusal to a future full-time vacancy.
Yeah, I'm thinking more of it coming up in locations, so we bring you back, but maybe we can't satisfy your preferred location where you left from. But something else opens on that location, or another comparable position opens up. We're not going to put someone else or hire for it. We come to you first. If you want it, you get it. If you don't, you want it, now you're comfortable where you are, that's fine too, but give the option to that without kicking out other full-time faculty member who just put in that location. He may have been there now for over a year. That's sort of what we're thinking. But I think your characterization is accurate.
Okay. Yeah, when we finish going through this, I think we can at least let you know if we're interested enough to make it worth working out language in just a couple minutes.
Out of curiosity, why would you bump why would you bump the veteran over the new hire, as opposed to sending the new hire to the new location?
Well, one, not necessarily assume it's a new hire. So the person who takes over may have been somebody from another location that moved over here, maybe an existing person. But even if it's a new hire.
In other words, seniority should take precedence.
Sometimes seniority is good, and sometimes it's whoever is most qualified at the time to be in that location, but there are so many different factors. We're uncomfortable with having it black and white. You're definitely going to bump this or that. From my perspective, a lot of it's circumstances. If it's an extended medical leave, hopefully it doesn't come up very often, but the situation I have in mind is extended medical leave where you're out and we hope you come back, but we're filling with a full-time position because there's a good chance you may not come back. If that happens, but then miraculously you're able to come back, we all applaud, but the person who is put in that position is now uprooted and may have moved, may have done other things, and the thought that this person is probably not coming back.
But wouldn't
So
they be
there's some
hired
equities.
knowing that they're only in a basically, okay, how it works in the K-12 is that you're hired as a long-term sub, knowing that at the end of the year or when the person comes back, they're basically, that you will most likely be displaced. If it's a potential to have it go full-time, they're hired with the understanding that this is a temporary job, but it could go full-time if this person doesn't come back. So I don't understand why it's different here.
Again, it may not be a new hire, so somebody's gonna be out, college assigns you where you're teaching. If it's a new hire, and it may be, that may be an area for further discussion and compromise, but it's really just the circumstance of medical being difficult to foresee. And the length of leave, here we're talking about leaves are likely going to be a year at least, if not a year plus at least 12 more weeks.
And if I may, in some disciplines, it's exceedingly difficult to find an adjunct faculty member and compound that, an adjunct faculty member who's capable, able, willing to teach at certain times that the program necessitates them to teach, you see? So then the college is obligated to have to hire a full-time faculty member.
Okay.
And we might not be able just to transfer an existing faculty member. And then to Mr. Cody's point, that's when all the other variables come in, when you're hiring somebody new.
Right.
So
But
they've
I feel
begun
like
the
that
program.
still would be, that person being hired would still be aware that that was the situation they were coming into. That it may or may not. I don't know, I guess.
I mean, there's positions.
Do you see what I'm
called
saying?
Well, in academia, there are things called visiting professors. They're actually given very short, specific contracts. So this isn't in the realm of, this makes sense. This is what academics do for short-time positions or to fulfill.
Right, but you guys, the assumption, I think that the difference in my scenario is that the assumption is it's a short-time position.
Right.
See, when we're filling full-time, the assumption might be very different. We're usually talking about a catastrophic medical issue where your hope is to come back, but it might be no one really knows. So then to fill that position with a qualified person, yeah, I see your point. They might know, well, there's that possibility, always that possibility of someone coming back. But to get good qualified people, so I'm coming in, maybe I'm out after one semester, maybe a whole year, maybe I have to move to a different location. We want the flexibility. Now, we could do it seniority-wise, there's another way of doing it, but we're not proposing that. Obviously, you can do that, and if it's a new hire, then it's one way. If it's an existing person, maybe the calculation will be different. Talk about it and let us know kind of what your thoughts along with these lines, and we can further discuss on our side. That was same as here, pretty lengthy discussion for us on how we would work with that. The good news is I reminded our side is these are the kind of things we hope usually don't come up that often. It does come up, and usually, and I think higher ed is probably better than most, we're dealing with somebody's full-time who's got catastrophic medical issues. Everybody is pretty sympathetic to that. So we want to get the language in the contract right, but I don't anticipate these are kind of things to be going to grievances. I'd be a little surprised at that. So, but let's try and see if we can't bridge the gap on that. Temporary duty and the illness, injury in the line of duty, I don't think we have big problems with that, but we want to run again by the route. We may be in a position to come back to you and say, let's TA that next time around. Military leave, this one is different than our IMM, as you probably know. I think I pointed out when we made it, our IMM is under revision right now because it doesn't reflect the last go around of legislative changes to the law. So I think we're on the same page there because I think you guys are on board with the change, but I want to check with the relevant on the status of the revision to the IMM. But I anticipate we could probably TA that next time around. Court related leave, we still haven't gotten to the point where we are in the process of looking looking at revisions to the Ironman. I don't think that that one has yet been crystallized to the point where we can make a proposal. And the sabbatical, I don't know that we're too far off with the same issue we kicked around. What I would propose on the leave of absence is really for us, the administration side, to come back to you on really the sick leave, maybe extended medical leave, military leave, sabbatical, temporary duty. Most of them except for the court-related leave and parental leave, section 1. Possibly, I think we might need more time on the personal leave we've had to do. So about half of them we think we're almost at TA status, probably will be next time around. It does come back to you next session on that. The other half, we'll probably need more time, administration to figure out where we are. So probably maybe for a session or two after that.
I think you talked about the possibility of working on grievance and discipline in your caucus, and it sounds like a lot of it got
We
consumed.
didn't get to it. Briefly talked about the grievance process and just still kind of of the mindset for the holdup there is really how the rest of the contract. The delay is not indicative of a wide gap between yours and ours. I don't think is what I'm saying. It's more of the couple of tweaks, maybe agreeable, but depends on the rest of the contract. So still looking at that each time, but not in a position to come back to it.
Okay.
This one we just need to discuss. Didn't want to spend another hour or two.
Right.
We probably need to rail for that was the thought too.
Okay. So if you want to give us 2-3 minutes, we'll talk about whether the idea you kind of floated for returning from medical and sabbatical and all that sort of stuff is kind of worth pursuing or not.
Yeah, let's take 5 minutes and we'll talk about the academic freedom one and
We'd be in the same place, or
huh?
we'd be in the same place?
I mean, the same, we'll just go inside.
Yeah.
We'll just.
Although I might need to go back downstairs. I've been signing copies of the one there. I left downstairs, unless I left them in here. Is that room still open now?
Ed, did you lock the door downstairs? You look at me. It didn't register.
Yeah. If that's the case, we can talk about. It's not assigned to us, it's them making calculations for the issue. Will we be able to?
That's what it is.
Can we go?
Yeah.
Clean copies.
Yeah, that would mean.
Oh, that's what I need.
We may be able to, I'll discuss with you. Okay? Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so. Did you give her the numbers?
Yes,
Okay, you got the
That's
numbers.
what I said,
And I'll
thank you.
mention them for the good of the order when we get back.
cool, cool. At least this gives us an idea of what we're looking at.
You can see the
you know?
reasonableness there.
Yeah. But again, I didn't know if it was
Gotcha.
50, 100. I don't know.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, we've got a few. All right. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to see if we're
No change.
interested in the idea of
This person.
Okay, appropriate.
To manage these four programs.
Manage these four programs. Okay, so why is, I'm not saying,
Why did you treat this cyber different?
cyber different?
Is cyber the only one with a bachelor's degree? It doesn't cyber have a
It
bachelor's
had-
degree?
well, it
Is it the only one that's really
Yes.
Okay, so,
Yes.
extended medical leave thing.
Yes.
Oh,
I mean,
maybe.
I'm not saying it's good or bad, I'm just like, okay, so why?
So the question is just, are we, if the idea is.
No,
I'm
please don't go there. Take off.
What, for what? For the.
To come up with language saying, oh, a new person, and maybe they get displaced immediately with the veteran person, maybe they don't, or.
I think we should just have
Seniority.
seniority clause, something to say, whoever's the most senior person. I mean, I don't know why they're trying to reinvent the wheel on that. The K-12 already ironed it out. It's really simple. Senior person gets the job, they get their job back, and everybody else gets bumped along.
No, I didn't want to say it, but it's not really that thing in K-12 anymore. You
Oh,
can't use
really?
seniority for anything in K-12.
Oh,
We are all hired college-wide. We're not hired tethered to a particular campus. So honestly, I don't see how this has any legs at all. That when you come back from an extended medical leave, that you get to go back to college. They could send me over to West. at that point.
Yeah.
If I can't make, load where I am now, they have the right now to send me any place.
Even if the drops dead, they'll send me over there.
Oh, the feed, oh, oops.